Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here's your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Well, happy Easter, and thanks for joining us for another Sunday morning. I don't know what better Sunday morning we could get than Easter Sunday, right here on Faith in Our Hometown. My guest this morning is going to be Aaron Brown, who is the lead pastor over at St. Paul's United Methodist. Aaron, thanks for coming back to the show again.
It's good to be here.
It's always fun to have you around and fun to have these conversations. This morning, we're just going to be talking a little bit about Easter for those of us who celebrate it and for those of us who don't. Thanks for indulging us this morning. That's all I can say. But it'll be a good day to talk a little bit about some of the central tenets of Christianity and our responses to them and why it should matter to anybody in this day and age. You know, 2018, who'd have thunk? You know, there you go. But we're going to be talking a little bit about what Easter is and what the resurrection is and what that means for all of us. But we thank you for joining us again this morning for Faith in Our Hometown. We're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute. So stick around, don't go away, and indeed grab yourself a cup of coffee because and clink them together and wish each other a happy Easter.
Once I quit playing football, I still kept up with the eating, the amount of calories I wasn't exercising, so the weight started adding on. Dr. Lou is very knowledgeable in the work he does. He also has a program set up that has support systems in place for you. You know, you'll go through the seminar at first. He'll give you the different examples of surgeries you can have to see which one works best with you. He will also sit down with you and discuss the options, what he feels, but he'll work with you the entire time. Mercy has their gastric bypass program here. They have all kinds of resources and support systems in place. They want to see you succeed, and they're here to help you the entire time, even after the surgery.
Well, again, thanks for joining us. Happy Easter. Happy Easter, Aaron Brown.
Happy Easter.
There we go.
Yeah.
So, how, other than church, how are you going to spend the day?
Well, let's see, Easter egg hunt. We have some traditions. We do the classic Easter egg hunt. Even my kids are getting a little older, 11 and 18. We're going to Easter egg hunt. And then
at your house or
at our
church?
House, at our house, yep.
Okay.
So, we'll probably grill out something. I just love doing that. But then after we do the Easter egg hunt, we'll do it like 3 or 4 times, and the eggs start to fall apart, real eggs. And then I have a water balloon launcher, and we will launch the remaining eggs into the woods and down the street and watch them explode. It's a tradition.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Please,
if I could borrow some of these.
If you live in the Brown neighborhood, you could hurt somebody with those.
Yeah.
These are wood.
So
these are, we're not going to be launching these anywhere.
No.
And
right.
be careful
okay,
if you live
Dad.
anywhere in the Brown neighborhood. I just want to say, be aware.
It's a
be aware
tradition.
this afternoon. Okay?
Yeah. And you?
I've got, of course, we just finished up the 3-day festival. We do our big, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, big 3-day festival leading up to Easter. All of our new Catholics coming into the church, and all that stuff. And then, usually I want to just go over to, other families, in the afternoon. My own family is mostly gone now, but I still, every Easter, make our family foods for Easter, and usually sit with maybe sometimes my associates or whatever, and we just make sure that we get a little chance to do the old, so I'll be making my mom's, which was my dad's mom's, potato salad, and those kinds of things, just doing our thing. And then, of course, I'll probably collapse for a Sunday afternoon nap this afternoon.
Me too.
And then after that, of course, we'll still have I'll have Sunday night mass tonight at 6 p.m. because we, and again, a few years ago I thought, well, that'd be one day that most people are going to go to that 6, but some people, because they're working at the hospital or doing whatever, they still need a Sunday evening celebration.
That's their Easter morning.
We're there.
Is Sunday night.
Exactly. So we're doing our thing. So I love it. It's a day kind of wrapped in church and family fun. And even though I'm sharing with some of my other families, I still really enjoy it because I just enjoy that whole thing.
Yeah,
now that's something for us as Christians.
Right.
Okay, because we've been celebrating Easter most of our lives.
Right.
Okay, or all of them. What about Easter for somebody who, there are people who are waking up this morning going, why? What's the big deal about this Easter thing? What are you gonna say? What would you say to them?
Well, I think it's the message that God gives the universe, specifically us humans here. That the worst things are never the last things.
Isn't it the truth? Yeah, that crucifixion, that cross only lasts for 3 hours, but the Easter and the resurrection lasts forever.
The worst things are never the last things, and I think about that phrase, and that's the phrase that I come back to at Easter time. But I think about it when I hit the bad stuff, or the people that I know are going through the tough stuff. I remember, I hate to always go back to the tornado, but it's such a monolithic thing in my life, but I remember standing there at the tornado thinking, you don't come back from this. Communities don't come back from this. I've been with people that have been in relational distress and relational catastrophes, and they're saying, you just don't come back from this, or financial messes, you just don't come back from this. And I think the message of Easter affects even those situations of life, to say these worst things, financially, relationally, whatever it might be, a death, the worst things you can think of are not the last things.
No, and I just think that's one of those things, even when somebody dies, I just say, look for the new life. Look for the new life. I know your world is in tatters right now, and I don't expect you to feel good about it. I know you're going to suffer through, and I will be right there with you as you suffer through. But I guarantee you, if you keep your eyes open, you're going to see the new life too. And it happens all the time. I think that part of that whole paradox is that we find the life even in the midst of the death. We find the light even in the midst of the darkness. We find the joy even in the midst of the suffering. And I just think that's now. And even I'm going to say this to any of our listeners who might not happen to be believers, although I'm not sure why they'd be watching this show, but I still hope they are.
Yeah.
I would just say,
maybe
it's that I've talked
just
for the fun of it.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I'm just saying, even in that context, even if I've made it all up, it comes back perennially true. Every time it happens, it's true. Which is one of the reasons why, I still believe it all happened, because I'm here. I've lived to tell about it. I've had all those things. We talked about that several weeks ago on one of our shows about our teenagers, and the fact that sometimes when they fail at something, they just think it's the absolute end of the world, that it's over, that nothing else is going to be able to give them any happiness anymore, or how am I going to survive this? And those of us who've been around a little bit longer, we've already been there. We've already fallen face first. We've committed, as I say sometimes to my teenagers, it's like, you guys are rank amateurs when it comes to sitting. You guys you didn't get any practice yet. But we've been through it. We've come back from it.
And the worst
we survived
things
it.
are not the last things.
They are not. They are not.
Yeah.
Is that what you're preaching about today?
Well, obviously, it is about, I think today is about hope, and I think my job is just to do the best I can in the limited way that I can to just say, hey, hope prevails, death does not win, life wins. And that in the face of whatever we've done, our sin, our shame, I just come back around to that, hey, that stuff doesn't get the last word. And it may feel like it at the time, but it doesn't. And that's what the resurrection of Jesus is all about. It looks like it's the end. And for skeptic people out there, folks that really struggle with resurrection stuff, I think I draw some hope from the fact that his own disciples didn't believe in the resurrection right off the bat.
All right, let's
like, and I think it's because people then had much more exposure to death than we do today. They knew what a dead body. They were around death a lot more than you and I are today.
Well, we cover it all up.
It was in their faces all the time, and so they knew when someone was dead. We kind of look back, and some people are skeptical and say, "Oh, Jesus really wasn't dead." I think they knew what dead was dead, much more so than we do today. And so, for them at the end, it was like, for the disciples, this is all over. And so it took a literal resurrection for them to say, wait a second, this is world changing. So, I just think for the skeptical side of me, the skeptical side of lots of folks, and if you look at God and what God would want to do, you think, God, this is such an impossible thing that a dead body comes back to life. But if you're God, what do you want to do? You don't want to do the possible to let folks know, hey, there's a reality beyond this reality. You want to do the impossible. To let folks, I'm getting excited.
I know, because it's
Easter.
It's Easter. You might as well get excited. I'm sharing some of that giddiness on the inside. I'm just holding it in a little bit better.
Yeah.
No,
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're so much more refined than I am.
No, not refined. It's just I'm letting you talk, which is very unusual. So it's all good.
Yeah.
I like it.
All right.
As long as because I was kind of like getting into the groove there. I almost was ready to give you an
about to
amen.
preach. Yeah.
I was about ready to give you an amen, brother.
All right.
Okay,
All
and
right.
that's just not, and that we don't do that very often in our tradition.
I do have a question for you, though.
Yes.
So, Easter is the day when we, a lot of traditions break the fast. Mm-hmm. Or the Lenten sacrifices that have been made. You let them go.
Well, you hope that you've been transformed enough while you've been in the habit of doing that fasting, while you've been in those. And I think the perspectives are always good here. I always remind everybody this. We have to do 40 days of fasting, okay? But we do 50 days of feasting.
Starting on Easter?
Starting on Easter. That's why for Pentecost,
See, I didn't know that.
Pentecost the 50th day after, okay? But you do 50 days of feasting. You only have 40 days of fasting, but you get 50 days of feasting.
I did not know that.
It's just one of those fun things that we get 10 extra days to whoopee. And I love that part. I think it shows the perspective. But the 40 days were hopefully for some transformation. Yeah. The 40 days were hopefully those days where we did some extra praying, okay? So we did some extra trying to connect with God, what's out there, we're just trying to okay, how do I make this connection? How do I make it stronger? How do I make it better? We did some extra giving, okay? Because again,
financial
when we
giving,
find
or
all
time,
of it, get all of it. I mean, you're just emptying yourself, giving away a little bit of what you've got in abundance, whether it be time, whether it be gifts or talents, whether it be financially or whatever. But how do I just become more generous? How do I come out of myself a little bit to do that? And then the third old practice, it's straight out of the scriptures and straight out of most spiritual traditions. The third one is fasting. And again, fasting, look at that in the big sense. Sometimes when you're a little kid, fasting may mean I'm not giving up gum for Lent. I'm giving up chocolate. Or, if you're an adult, maybe giving up, beer or wine or coffee or whatever. But there's also that sense of, and we also have fast days where we're only supposed to eat, small amount during the day. We didn't do that now. Like our Muslim brothers and sisters, they when they fast, they do it the tough way. Nothing from sunup to sundown. Our Christian traditions have gotten a little bit, easier with that over the years, over the centuries, and now we say, okay, we fast from, we fast from all meat products, except for fish meat, and then, but one meal a day. So then emptying out. But the fasting thing can also have other things. So I can fast from being mean to people. I can fast.
We shouldn't do that anyway.
Exactly.
Stop being mean to
Let's
me.
face. When have I ever mean to you?
You're going to start being mean to me tomorrow?
No.
Okay.
Because the whole point is what you're doing in Lent is supposed to leave you by the time you get to Easter with that transformation already in place. Yeah. And the emptying out is just so you can figure out what you're hungry for. At any rate, we're going to take a quick break. This is Faith in Our Hometown. Don't go away because we're going to be back to celebrate Easter a little bit more. So stick around.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
Okay, brothers and sisters out there in TV land, I'm going to give you an old Latin phrase. Resurrexit, sicut dixit, alleluia. Okay? Which basically means he is risen as he said, and the ritual response was alleluia. Okay?
Christ is risen.
There you go.
Risen indeed.
Risen indeed. There's another one of those ritual responses. You got it. So, at any rate, we're here this morning on Easter Sunday, just talking a little bit about what Easter means to us, what the bigger message is out there. When I stop and I think, well, when everybody would, say, well, what does this mean to say? I'm not Catholic. I'm not Christian. I'm not anything. what's this whole Easter thing about? And and for me, it boils down to simply life. That you were saying earlier, it's interesting, and philosophically, I'm going to play with this a little bit because, well, it makes good TV. Okay. But
this is good TV.
Yeah, this is good TV.
Okay,
Don't
it's
miss
about
it.
to be good.
Don't miss it.
It's about to
Don't
be good.
miss it.
Here we go.
But when you were talking about a culture of death, that they knew death when they saw it. That they knew death, and that they lived much more closer to it. I think they did in terms of just mortality and dead bodies and life expectancies and all that stuff. I mean, anything could get you in those days. I mean, but what's interesting? I think that in some ways, we have a culture that actually toys with death a whole lot more in this day and age. We have a culture that devalues people. We have a culture that takes people for granted. We have a culture where people are bought and sold again. We have a culture where people choose sometimes, and I mean, it's very deceptive, but they think it's going to bring them life, but it actually just winds up making them more miserable with so many things. I think we live in a culture where we've embraced death way too readily and way too easily. And in that regard, I mean, I think that's what so much Easter is. I mean, you mentioned it, hope, and that for me that's the way I'd put that through that lens of hope, is the fact that Easter reminds us of is that there are life is worth living, and we got to do all that we can in order to choose life rather than choosing death. I think we got so much in our society that drains our life out of us, and I think that Easter's about that renewal of hope that basically says, that we can choose life. Life does matter, and again, as you said, no matter how bad it gets, that's not the end. That there is more life and that it's worth living. And so I mean, that for me is the message that I'd want to spread to everybody. I mean, in some ways, I preach. You and I both preach to the choir. I mean, we're not just the choir, but a church full of people. But I mean, we're preaching to people who are already in church. You know what I mean? They're already inclined to believe it. What are we saying, and how are we living, and what are we doing that's going to talk to all those other people out there who never believed it? What are we saying and doing for those people out there that that have never experienced resurrection the same way we were talking about it a few minutes ago?
I think it is. You have friends. I have friends who do not believe, but they're my friends.
Yeah.
And I like to be with them, and I think, and they like to be with me. And I think the reason that is because in my belief and in my faith, there's something that radiates out of me, and I think that is light. And I think a culture of death is a culture of darkness, and darkness isn't a thing; it's the absence of a thing. It's the absence of light. And so I think in my life I try to radiate this light and fail sometimes, obviously, but I think I strive to be a person of kindness no matter what I'm doing, and I think that is something that whether you're a believer or not, that I want to convey kindness so that maybe you catch that's contagious, a contagious sort of kindness and a contagious sort of generosity. Light gets lived out in generosity. I think light gets lived out in that sense of hope that you have. I think light gets lived out in us being good caretakers of creation. I'm real serious about the footprint that I leave on this earth. Whether that's making sure that we in our household recycle everything, and that's a radiating light out into our world. And so I think that if I can do that, and people may not believe in the Christ I believe in, but maybe they'll believe in some of the byproducts of my faith, which is that kindness, that generosity, that love, the integrity, honesty. I mean, that's light. And I want to be that. And if somebody can pick up on that from my life, then that's good. That's a good thing. I do want them to know that the source of the light, which is not me, but I guess we're mirrors. We're the best mirrors. Try to be the best mirrors we can be. But I think that's the message of Easter too. This is light in the midst of the darkness. I love that the Easter story begins at the crack of dawn,
right.
with the women going to the tomb, and all the gospel stories are slightly different about what happened there. And I love that fact too, that they're a little bit different in how they describe it, as if somebody is so excited about what they're telling that sometimes they get those little details wrong, but the overall picture is the same in every gospel. Jesus came back from the dead, and what a great source of light that is.
I think it's interesting too. Now, this is what, again, I love some of the details. I love the details in the Easter story. I just think they're fun because I think each one shows us something different. But I love the fact that what they really experience is the empty tomb. Mm-hmm. Him they don't experience first. Mm. So in some ways, we don't know what it is to experience that light, that joy, that, the resurrection, without first also seeing that it's empty. Mm-hmm. That there's some emptiness there in our lives. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, that joy, that light, that life fills it. Mm-hmm. And we suddenly have an encounter with the risen Lord, like they did. And we've had 2,000 years to get used to this whole resurrection thing. I mean, you can imagine what that was like when they were first doing it, the first round. Yeah. I mean, that was amazing. I mean, it's just like,
a lot of the messengers around there, like, don't be afraid. Well, why? Why would they say don't be afraid? Because they were afraid.
Exactly.
This was not normal.
Well, typically, I always laugh because, when the scriptures, they tell you don't be afraid, the first thing you probably need to be prepared for is you need to be really, really afraid. Because life is going to change. And I think that that's another challenge for us is those of us who take the resurrection for granted and are so glum about it, that basically means that if we're going to change, and if we're going to be people who believe in life and light and love and joy and Easter, that means that we can't afford to live the same, I should be living life different this week than I lived it last week. I should be more in line with, who Jesus is and what his life and life were all about. And that basically makes a few ethical demands on me, I can't, if I'm living it just the same, if Easter's, same old, blah, 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 as I'm fond of saying, oh yeah, Easter, blah, 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 resurrection, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure sometimes people who listen to me think exactly that. Okay, here he goes again. Yeah. But if we're not changed by this whole thing, then really what good is it? Yeah. What good is it?
Yeah, we're just going through the motions, and it just becomes a story to tell rather than a life to live.
Well, and that's my whole thing. If all this is about telling stories from 2,000 years ago, that's not what lights me up, like, an Easter egg, okay? Mm-hmm. What lights me up like an Easter egg is the fact that my life has to be wrapped up in resurrection. And because my life's wrapped up in resurrection, I can't be the same. Mm-hmm. I've got to continually be reformed. I've got to continually be renewed. Mm-hmm. It's like when all those people who came into the church last night, okay, while they were making their baptismal promises, I was re-upping. Mm-hmm. And I may have been giving them the words. Do you believe in this? Do you believe in that? I may have been feeding them those words, but as they were saying, I do, and the whole congregation was saying, I do, I on the inside had to be saying, I do believe in this. Mm-hmm. I do believe it makes a difference. Yeah. I do believe it matters. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, what are we doing this morning? So I get pumped up that way to think about, well, what really is the resurrection going to mean in my life today? And it's not just telling the story from 2,000 years ago, but what does it come to life? How does it come to life in me? Mm-hmm. How does my life change? Mm-hmm. How am I with more light and more love and more luminosity, if you will, that glow in the dark thing? How do we do it?
Well, and I think the glow comes from partly, the light, not just radiating out from us because we've received it, but radiating into us and bringing a sense of cleansing and forgiveness. And I think that's the other thing that we can convey to believers and non-believers too, is like, gosh, forgiveness is such a powerful thing, to forgive ourselves, to be forgiven by God. And resurrection is the power of forgiveness in so many different ways, and the crucifixion that precedes that. I think of the story, true story. My youngest daughter was pretty little, and we were at the movie theater. And my wife and daughter go into the restroom, and my daughter has her little baby doll with her. And of course, they're in the restroom, and what happens is my daughter drops the doll into the toilet. So that would have been the end for me, for the baby
Not a
doll.
fun moment.
But so my wife takes the doll out of the toilet and starts to clean her up, and is obviously disgusted by this. And my little daughter looks up at my wife and says, "She's dirty, Mom, but I love her.
There you go.
I still love her." And I think
there's a story that'll preach, brother.
I think that's another facet of the Easter story. It's like, hey, I know that you have sinned. I know that there's a darkness in you. You're dirty. You've gone swimming in the toilet of life, right?
Yep.
But I still love you, and I'm willing to do this for you. I'm willing to go to the cross, and not only go to the cross, Jesus says, but I'm willing to come back for you, to come back to life. And that puts a claim on your life.
Yeah.
How
do we not respond to that? How do we not respond to that?
And that's the thing about Easter, though, and the response is meant to be joy.
Oh, yeah.
You got to talk about death on Easter, but the best part is to talk about the joy of life, and that life wins. Death does not win.
Yep. Amen, brother. Okay, well, we're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute. Don't go away.
The SANE program, or Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner program, is a program established to provide a coordinated, specialized care to patients or women or men who've been the victim of sexual assault.
The SANE program is really designed to be a collaborative community response to sexual assault.
It's really important to make sure that it's not just the report or the forensic, but they get all of the testing that might be needed for their health.
It's also important to know that you don't need to know if you want to press charges or not. We don't get law enforcement involved unless you request it.
I just want to express to the victim that it is never your fault. You always have the right to say no, and that it's your body. So if you say yes one time, it doesn't mean every time.
I think it's important that sexual assault victims remember they've been victims of a crime, and crime victims do not pay for those services.
Well, again, happy Easter. It's been fun talking with my friend Aaron Brown today about the joys of Easter. It always is fun to have Aaron around. That's why I have him for the big holiday things. We have a lot of fun. I think about one of the old ancient legends about the Easter egg, and that was Mary Magdalene, who was a patrician class, finally got a thing with an appointment with the emperor to talk about what had happened, and she was telling how Pilate had botched, Jesus's trial and all those things, and the emperor just looked at her with scorn when she was talking about the resurrection. He said, we have about as much chance. Somebody would have about as much chance of rising from the dead as this egg would turn red. And according to the legend, of course, the egg turned red. And the color, of course, then drained from the emperor's face. And Mary Magdalene was kind of like, see, I told you.
That's the first Easter egg.
That's one of the legends around the Easter egg. And that's why Mary Magdalene, if you look at Eastern iconography, is always holding a red egg. So there you have it. Wow. At any rate, this is Faith in Our Hometown. Happy Easter. God bless.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.